welcome to part 6 of the Warrior Within docu-series. I have had a lot of fun doing this docu-series so far. A lot of incredible guests, a lot of incredible stories, incredible journeys. I can't use the word incredible enough. This next guest is an amazing human being. I haven't gotten to know him for very long. I haven't had that privilege yet, but he is a fellow host, show host for Cosmos Creative Television. He's a graphic novel artist. He's a man of many talents. Viewer discretion is strongly advised on this program, and if you're listening, listeners' discretion is strongly advised. And without further ado, may I introduce you, Manny Zamora, and this is Manny's Journey. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me, Jamie.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I haven't gotten to know you for very long, but the times that I have been on shows with you or programs, you seem like you're a man of many, many talents, and you probably have stories to tell.
Yeah, I I'm becoming more comfortable with the idea of actually having talent. I used to, well, I shouldn't say I used to. I still kind of do suffer from a little bit of imposter syndrome. Sometimes I think, who am I fooling? Who am I kidding here? But I'm getting better at that. I'm taking ownership of my talent, I guess, my abilities as an artist, as a show host, all that. Things that in my misspent youth I never thought I'd actually do.
Yeah.
But here we are, and I think that's one of the wonderful things about this new age, this new technology that we live in with things like YouTube and StreamYard, which is what we use here to record our shows and stuff like that. It's become truly democratic in that anybody can have a show now.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, there's all these different platforms like TikTok and Instagram. Well, we don't know how long TikTok's going to last because things are rapidly changing in that area. Uh, but yeah, but as long as we have them, we this is for us. This is our rather than having to go through networks and executives and all this nonsense. It's just us. It's one on one. That's why we can have programs like this. And if I may, a shameless plug, shows like Two Guys and a Gal talking about movies.
Yeah.
Monday nights at 6 p.m. Eastern time.
Yes, most
And yeah,
definitely.
shows like Rory's. You mentioned Rory. He has the Big Monster Briefing Room. And recently I was promoted to a full co-hosting position there. I was just an occasional guest, and now I'm part of the show, which I'm very, very happy about, very grateful that Rory, who's immensely talented, decided that, hey, let's have this guy on every week. So thank you, Rory, for that. And so yeah, that's uh, that's my recent journey so far.
Yeah. And I mean, we met through Cosmos Creative Television, of course,
Right?
and
Yeah.
like I, said in the introduction, I haven't had the privilege of getting to know you for very long, but I'm glad that we've crossed paths.
Yes.
Um, Technology is incredible. Like
Yeah.
I met Renee Yaworski through, Social Distance Fest. I was watching a musician on there and she happened to be in the chat, and then the rest is history. And here I am.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Well, I
incredible.
met Renee. I met Renee through a fellow YouTuber by the name of Dennis Tardon. He
Yeah.
has his own network, the Tardon Network, and his own shows on there. And he was coaching Renee and helping her along with her career. And so that's how I met her. And through her, I met Rory. And I was a guest on some shows. And she said, why don't you have your own show? I think you have a certain presence, she said. And I was like, really? Do I? And said, yeah, you should have your own show. So, figure out something that you like to do and let's see if we can do it. And I said, okay. So I thought about it and I thought, well, I like movies. I like talking about movies. And I know Rory likes talking about movies, obviously, with his big monster show.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, why don't we do this show, kind of a Siskel and Ebert type thing, where we review movies. And from that, it evolved into what is now Two Guys and a Gal. Uh, well, it was originally titled Two Guys and Sometimes a Gal,
Yeah.
because she'd pop in and out. Though we try to encourage her to make her presence known more often. But and she said, "Yeah, sounds like a great idea." And we talked to Rory, and he said, "Yeah, I'll be a host or co-host on that." And like you said, the rest is history. And last year we started off with a few shows, and we said, "Hey, this works," and we just kept at it. And now I've lost count. I think we've got 30 some odd shows in the can already,
Yeah.
and more to come. I mean, there's plenty of actors, plenty of actresses, plenty of movies to talk about. So it'll be hard to run out of subject matters on that. So in fact, Monday we're going to talk about. Our subject will be Mike Myers, the comedian. That was suggested actually by. We have a special guest on the show, Panorea, who's also who I met through this channel, and she has her own channel, and so we've developed a nice little community here on Cosmos, on the PanNet channel, Pan's channel, uh, Tardon Media. We're all kind of interrelated. So, which is, so we have our own a little network going on here, and networking as well.
Yeah.
And I got to say, like you said, we really haven't learned about each other, but you certainly helped me. Uh, a few years ago, I wrote a movie script, and uh, in talking to people, well, especially Renee, she said, "Man, I'd love to have a table reading of this. Get some people together and read it out loud and see how it goes." And so I said, "Yeah, okay, that's fine." And so you were a part of
Yeah.
that read. Uh, in fact, we had two of them because I had later on, based on that first one, I edited the script and
Yeah.
changed it up a bit, and you agreed to come back on and play a part of that, and that was several parts actually, because I only had a few people coming in, but so we had a great time. Really helped me out a lot
Oh.
as far as figuring out, okay, what worked, what didn't work, how did the dialogue sound, all that stuff. So thank you, Jamie. I really appreciate you coming in and doing that.
Oh, no problem. I enjoyed reading it.
Good, good.
I really enjoyed reading it. It's a very well written script, and I
Thank
enjoyed
you.
it.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, let me ask you something. I know this is supposed to be about me, but let me ask you something
No,
since
you're
we're
fine.
getting to know each other. I know you have another show. The was it the Dark Glitter? Is that
Sessions. Yes.
Dark Glitter Sessions? And it's all about music and all that stuff, and it tends to be more sort of towards hardcore music.
Usually.
How did you get into that? How did that start?
Um, so I used to be a goth chick, believe it or not, and I play guitar. I used to play guitar for the jazz ensemble at Quincy University. Um, I was the rebel that always wanted to do jazz fusion because I wanted to get the rock in there somehow.
Yeah.
So it kind of just evolved from there. I was a radio DJ. I hosted a show called The Jam Session, and that's kind of how that all started. And I love anything Halloween. It's like Halloween 24/7 for me. I love Halloween. I love Halloween. I love
Yeah.
metal music. I love all of that. So it kind of evolved from there. I have another show called Belongs to the Shadows, which is haunted history. Um,
Hmm.
and so it's just kind of taking my love for metal music, goth music, Halloween, and just mixing it all together.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. What do you think, speaking of jazz rock fusion, what do you think of bands like Steely Dan? They tend to fuse a lot of jazz with
Yeah.
rock and roll. Do you like them?
Yeah, I love all sorts of music. Like I'm not a music snob by any means. I love it all. And
Yeah.
I told my husband, I said the best part is playing obscure metal songs on the Spanish guitar because I think that's funny and it's a lot of fun.
That's funny to say that because I really love when somebody takes a song, and it goes both ways. When somebody takes like an easy listening song, like a Carpenter song, something like that, and puts it to a heavy metal beat, But I also like when somebody takes like a heavy metal song, like Metallica or somebody like that, and then turns it into like a ballad, you know,
Yeah.
like I said on guitar and stuff like that. I heard a version of a rap song, and it's just this hardcore. In fact, I think it's straight out of Compton, which I mean, it's hardcore,
Yeah.
gangster rap kind of deal. Public Enemy, I think it is, or no, NWA. Anyway, and this uh, female singer plays it, and she plays it like it's I don't know, uh, just like very ballady, just this guitar, but she keeps all the words, and so there's this sweet sounding little, this girl saying these like, you know,
Hard.
hardcore, F bombs and the N word and everything. And it's like, how does she get away with that? you know, but it's great. And I first time I heard it, I was like, what? And I had to laugh because it's just such an odd pairing, But I love that. I love that kind of fusion. I love that mix.
Yeah.
Sometimes you'll hear a song like on a soundtrack or usually they'll do it on a trailer. It'll be like an older song, and it was originally maybe like a hardcore, or metal song or something a little rougher, and it becomes kind of soft and ballady, and sometimes it make it even creepier, playing it that way. So it's interesting to show how music doesn't have to be one thing.
Yeah.
It can be a mix of things. I know right now there's this whole big controversy about Beyonce singing, country
Yeah.
and her rendition of Jolene and all this stuff. And I'm like, it doesn't matter.
Mhm.
It doesn't matter. It's still, when you're locked into these definitions of, well, this is country and this is rock and this is whatever, and you can only be in that lane.
Yeah.
It's like, no, you know, that's that's the problem with a lot of music is that everybody feels like they have to be in a certain lane, and you just got to stay in your lane. Um, like, no, music is music,
Yeah.
and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, and it's not like she's the first African American or Black artist to sing country. I mean, somebody brought up. I was watching a clip on TikTok where somebody was saying, what's the big deal? Has everybody forgotten Hootie? you
Yeah.
know, Darius Rucker,
Yeah.
and going back to Charlie Pride and all those guys, the OGs. Uh, so it's somebody always has to stir up the pot. Somebody always has to be all like, oh, this is. Yeah. I'm like, enjoy what you. My philosophy is enjoy what you enjoy, and if you don't enjoy it, don't listen to it, don't watch it, don't read it, but leave it for other people to enjoy. You
Yeah,
know, that's
exactly.
why I this whole campaign that some people have about banning books. Oh no, we can't have people reading these books, can't have kids reading. I'm like, okay, well, if you don't want your kids reading these books, then don't let them read it. That's your
Yeah.
responsibility as a parent, and excuse me. But if somebody else says, "Hey, yeah, it's okay. They can read that," then they should be allowed to. To preemptively start banning things or censoring things just because you don't like them.
Yeah.
That kind of defeats the whole purpose. And what's ironic and when I say ironic, I mean hypocritical,
Yeah.
is that these are the very same people who scream about freedom of speech. Well, what about my freedom of speech? Or take It's like, what about it? You're the one who's trying to take other people's freedom away. So why are you complaining? Anyway, I don't mean to get in the soapbox.
Oh, no, you're fine. No, you're fine. It's perfectly okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, music's supposed to be the universal language, and
Yeah,
that's what I love about it. It's a universal language. Also artwork, universal language. Like, I have the tendency to color outside the lines. I don't like to fit neatly inside a box, and I don't like to I like to rebel against people's expectations of me, I guess you would say, like, that's
right.
why I
Yeah,
have this show, The Warrior Within,
yeah, exactly.
I like to be
Exactly.
outspoken, and
Yeah.
that's
Well,
pretty much
you're
it is.
um, well, you're an artist as well, right? I mean, you paint and draw and all that, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Good, good. Is that one of your paintings right behind you with
Right
the
here, this is one of my simple paintings. I usually do mixed media art,
okay.
which is sculptures on canvas.
Oh,
So I do a lot of that. I do a lot of everything, like, just artwork. That's all I've ever known is artwork and music.
yeah, yeah. Well, speaking of which, I one of the things as I was growing up, I discovered I had that I could draw, and through that, I learned to paint. Uh, had lessons, painting lessons, and all that. And but again, I was talking about the imposter syndrome. I never thought I was good enough. I never thought, that 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 this is something that I could do, for a living, or something that I could, make something of, or whatever, because I just wasn't good enough, you know. And I've come to realize that the problem was that I was comparing myself to people who've been doing it for decades, and here I was just kind of starting out and thinking that I could, I'm painting masterpieces or whatever, um, or and one of my first loves, like a lot of guys, well, not just guys, but girls too, was comic books, and still is. I haven't grown out of that. And although we don't call them comics anymore, we call them graphic novels because that sounds, much more adult. But they're comics, you know. And so that's something that I wanted to do. I wanted to draw comic books and work for one of these big companies and work for Marvel or DC or something like that. But again, I keep I kept holding myself back, thinking, oh, because I look at these things and go, man, this art is so terrific, Why can't I do that? And it took me many, many years to realize, well, the reason I can't do that is because that's not my style. That's that person's style. That's his ability or her ability to draw in that way. And I need to figure out how I draw in my way. So finally, after years and years and years, and this is another thing that is nice about technology and is being able to be your own creator, uh, and not have to go through third parties, not have to go through a middleman. And so I, well, me and my partner at the time, my girlfriend at the time, who unfortunately has passed away since then, uh, she and I created a superhero character, uh, because she has a daughter, uh, who well, adapted. She adopted this Hispanic girl when she was a baby. The girl was a baby, not the girlfriend, obviously. When she was a baby, and she is tremendously talented. I mean, she's very artistic, uh, and we always joked about that she was very much like her adopted mother. Even though she was adopted, not to keep bringing that up, but not well, not she was not her technically, not technically, but she was not her of her flesh and blood. She didn't actually give birth to her, and yet she was more like her actual son.
Yeah.
Uh, as far as temperament, as far as artistic ability, all that. Um, but anyway, back to the point. She was always complaining that there weren't enough Latino, or there wasn't enough representation. Uh, you know, whether it's in movies or comics or whatever, and the heroes, the girl heroes were always, you know, almost naked. Their costumes were so revealing, and all that stuff. And I said, well, yeah, because they're drawn by guys. They're drawn by guys for guys.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So we sat around and we talked about it. We said, let's come up with a superhero, who is modestly dressed. She had her costume is not revealing, but she's still a very powerful girl, a powerful woman, and a professional. And let's see what we can do with it. So that's what we did. We created this character called La Salvadora, who her day job is a veterinarian at this private animal rescue, animal shelter kind of deal. And she becomes this superhero when animals are threatened and so forth. And so we created a villain who is an animal trafficker, uh, who buys and sells endangered species, or big, apex predators, and sells them off to, whoever, the highest bidder or whatever. And so that's the antagonist. And so there's this, conflict between these two. And right now I'm in the middle of finishing up the fifth issue of
Wow.
this comic. So I'm very happy about that. And it just took somebody telling me, no, you are good enough. You are, just draw it, and if it doesn't look like whatever, these other people, doesn't matter, as long as it's you make it as good as you can make it.
Yeah.
And so I did. And like I said, I'm 5 issues into this, and still improving, I think. And kind of become my life's work almost. So that's what I do.
Yeah.
uh and and also, like we said at the beginning, then I got involved with Cosmos, and hosting shows, and so that's become a part of my life as well. And just glad to be able to do that. So,
Yeah. It's so rewarding when you can do what you love. Even if you can't get paid for it, which would be the ultimate dream, to have a job with, your talent and get paid good money for it. That doesn't always happen, but it's
yeah.
good to be able to exercise your talent in other ways, like even if you don't get paid for it. And I enjoy doing shows for Cosmos. I enjoy doing artwork. Like, I haven't sold very many of my paintings, but I enjoy doing it. It's very therapeutic for me. Um, so I think it's really interesting that you're a graphic novel artist. Like, I've always kind of wanted to do that, but that's not really my style. And like you said, you had to find your style.
Hmm.
I always had that problem. I used to not display my artwork because I would nitpick it. I would pick it apart and I'm like, I'm not good enough. I am not good enough. I'm not good at this. And it took a really good art teacher, an art instructor in college telling me, no, your artwork is really good and you should display it, Jamie. You really should. It took her telling me that to get
Hmm.
me to where I'm like, okay, maybe my artwork's not so bad. It's kind of interesting. Okay, I like this.
Yeah, sometimes we just have to get out of our own way, get out of our own head, and have somebody else say. Sometimes we do need that validation. Sometimes we do need somebody to say, "No, you are good," and stop, you know, stop getting in your way. Stop saying, "No, I'm not," and just accept the fact that yes, you can draw, you can do this, you can paint, and do sculptures and what have you, and the other thing I've always been interested in and also got to do is write a book. So I wrote this novel, I finished it, and then threw it in a drawer and did nothing with it for years and years. And then finally, I got into a discussion with this guy at work, a coworker, who's also interested in it's a fantasy novel. And he's like, "Oh, is it like just that?" And I said, "Yeah, kind of." And he said, "Oh, well, can I read it?" And I was like, "Somebody wants to read something I wrote." So I said, "Okay." So, you know, I showed him a copy, and he said, "Do you mind if I make notes and whatever?" And I was like, "Yeah, I want some feedback." And boy, did he make notes. He really helped me edit this book and kind of pointed out some things that were kind of wonky, uh, and so I went back and I read his notes, and they were serious. I mean, he thought about these things, and I thought, wow. So I went back and I edited according to some of the things. Some of the stuff I kind of like didn't, because I thought, no, 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 I want to keep, because it's important for the story, whatever. But I did take into account a lot of his notes, and then I went back and I read it again, made a few more changes. And by that time, there was, Amazon was becoming a bigger and bigger thing. And I discovered that you could actually publish your own books on Amazon. I was like, what? Without having to go through a publisher, without having to go through all this other, these third parties, publish directly and sell it on Amazon. And I thought, okay, well, let's give it a shot. So that's what I did. And so my book is up there. It's called Shadow Maker. Another shameless plug. Thank you very much. And so me and my girlfriend, she was always interested in writing children's books. She has this very cute style of drawing herself and coloring and everything. And so we would write, or we wrote several children's books that she illustrated, and I formatted them, put them together, and we have them published also on Amazon. They're also available. So yeah, so there's no reason if you're a writer, if you're an artist, if you're whatever, uh, there are avenues out there, and it's not just Amazon. There are other sites as well where you can put your work up there.
Yeah.
Um, Now the downside of that is if you're not a particularly good writer, there might be a lot of crap out there. From people who think, well, I'm just going to write this, and they don't edit it, they don't, aren't careful with it, and they put it out. So you have to kind of sift through, but there's also a lot of good stuff out there.
Yeah.
And like I said, platforms like this, and even though Amazon is kind of this huge conglomerate thing, and there's some controversy about that as well. It's still a good place to put your work out, and at least in that respect, I'm glad it is. I'm glad it's there. So anyway,
I'm glad you mentioned that because, like, I did a tester book, I guess you would say. I put a book of poems out on Amazon. I was like, I did not know you could publish your own stuff on Amazon. I was so
yeah,
excited when I discovered that because I was like, I can't afford to pay somebody to publish my book. I cannot afford that. So it made it more accessible for people like
hmm
me. And I think that's great. That's wonderful. Like I have friends who have posted, their books on Amazon that they've written. And I just think that's incredible that they have that service.
yeah, exactly. And like I said, that's one of the upsides of technology is the ability to, especially for people like us, for creatives, who want to get our works out there, and can't or don't know how to go through traditional publishing, and get having to get an agent and all that stuff, where you can take your work to market right away, and it's almost instantaneous, um, or well, within a few days anyway. So I mean, I think that's certainly a boon for that in that respect. So
What is your writing process? Like for me, it's kind of hard to like stay focused on the book and the storyline. Like I have books that I have not finished writing. And it's been years. I just can't bring myself to finish them. What would you suggest would be a good way to focus and like your writing process?
okay, well, take notes. Take lots and lots of notes. Have a just have a plain old legal pad, and a pencil or pen, and just jot down. It can be just words. It doesn't have to be full sentences, because what that does is to it forces you to think. It forces it exercises the brain cells, uh, and and sometimes that'll spark an idea if you just write down a word, and you think about that word, and you think, well, what does this mean? How can I turn that into a story? Or a couple of words. If, say write, you know frozen wasteland, for example, and you're like, okay, what about a frozen wasteland? Is this back in the caveman era? Is this some future apocalypse? What about it? And then now you're thinking, oh, what if, okay, let's set it back in the ice age. What would be the difficulties of being a person in that time, trying to survive this wintry landscape. And so now you're thinking about a character. Okay, so who is this guy? Is it a guy? Is it a girl? Is it a child? What does he look like? Is he Cro-Magnon? Is he more human? And see, already you're starting to think, oh, okay. And now, and and you don't have to like start like, oh, I'm going to write a book now. You can put that away, you know, and come back to it. You open a drawer and you pull out this notebook or pad or whatever. And you see all these words written down, and like, oh, I hadn't thought about this in a while. What more can I add to this, or is this going anywhere? Um, you don't always have to start with the book like right away. Um, you lay the groundwork. I always use the analogy of building a house.
Yeah.
uh, you don't start with the inside. You don't start with the walls and chimneys and rooms or whatever. You start with a foundation. You start with a platform, and you start with a frame, and the framework that's your plot. That's the plot of the story,
Yeah.
and you know the story itself is the facade, is how you finish out this house. you know it can be a brick house, it can be just paneled house. The rooms can be configured in many different ways because you have all this interior space. uh are you putting up sheetrock, are you putting up paneling? All that stuff, that's your story. Those are the elements that go into your story. And because when you if you tear down the walls of a building, pretty much all frames look alike. So people talk about plot, or original plot. There are no original plots anymore.
Mm, no.
There's variations,
Yeah.
and the creativity comes in how you finish out your house, how you finish out your story. But you still have to lay that foundation out first and build that framework first. And that's why I say start with notes. Start, just jot down some things. Get your creative juices flowing, as people say, which is sounds like it's kind of icky anyway. But and as far as the writing process itself, what I do, what I've kind of forced myself to do is, and I know it's difficult for people, because there's so many other things that need to be done. Sometimes you need to, clean your house, you need to go get groceries.
Exactly.
If you have kids, you got to take care of the kids, and there's a million things that need doing, right? But if you could find even just 30 minutes in a day, after the kids are in bed, or the laundry's done, or whatever, uh, and um, so you find 30 minutes or even 15 minutes of just when there's nothing going on. You turn the TV off, and you sit down in front of a computer or typewriter, or just a notepad again, that people like to write longhand, and start writing. And it doesn't have to be anything spectacular. Write a paragraph, write a couple of paragraphs. You don't have to complete an entire chapter. And and then again, put it away. Because I think what happens is a lot of people feel like they need to get it all done, in just
Yeah.
as short amount of time as possible. Just need to, oh, I got to get it done before I lose the whatever, the muse goes away or whatever. And that's not how it works. You got to think of it as almost like a job that you go to. When you go to a job, you're expected to work 8 hours a day or whatever, right? Well, here you're only expected to work 15, 30 minutes. If you can carve out an hour, that's fine. You get a lot more done. but 15 minutes at minimum, I would say. That's still plenty of time to bash out, 100, 200, 300 words, you know. And and you, like I said, you put it away. So when you come back to it, you can come back to it with fresh eyes, like you're reading somebody else's work, and you go, okay, I see where this is going. Um, but before that, I kind of skipped a step. So you take out your notes, right? And as the story starts to form, now you get to the outlining stage. Now, people think that an outline has to be this formal thing, and that's good. And a lot of publishers demanded that when you had to go through a publisher. For me, I just write a sentence like chapter one, this is what happens in this chapter. Chapter two, and you think about, okay, well, how do I get from there to there? And the next thing, and I think of storytelling as the and then process. Kind of
Yeah.
like in improv, it's yes and. In writing, it's and then. Like you're telling us. To me, it's like you're telling a friend a story.
Yeah.
So I was standing in a corner, and then the bus pulled up. So I got on the bus, and then I sat down, and then and so on and so forth. And that's how you create the story. It's an and then, because then you're investing the reader in what happens next.
Yeah.
Like, okay, so you've taken me to this point, the end of a chapter or whatever. Well, you want the reader to say, and then what happened? It's that, and then what happened, that is the meat of the story, because that's what you want your reader to say, as they're reading it. It's like, oh, and then what happened? Well, then, you know, a tall man walked in looking like death, or whatever, whatever the story is, and so that's the process.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's helpful.
It is
Uh,
very helpful. I appreciate you sharing the process because, like, everybody has their own style of doing things, and I'm glad you mentioned, like, you don't have to get the book done immediately. Um, you want your audience to want to devour the book, so
yeah, yeah,
that you can write a second one.
right,
But
exactly.
like you don't have to put so much pressure on yourself to finish a book, like
Yeah.
writing
Well, I
it.
was telling, and something interesting happens. Uh, so I came up with the story for this new issue, for this comic book, right? And I wrote a script and everything, did exactly what I told you, outlined it, jotted down notes, outlined it, wrote the script. Well, in the process of translating the script into an actual into the comic, doing the drawings and all that, and putting in the dialogue, I discovered that the story was pulling me in a different direction from what I had originally written. And I thought, do I force it back to what I originally thought, or do I let it uh, continue? In other words, the story was telling me what it wanted to do,
Yeah.
and I said, no, I'm listening to the story. And that's when you know that you've gotten to that point of really being able to tell a story, is when you listen to the story itself and it tells you. And also the dialogue. I'd written some dialogue, obviously, to go along with the characters and the scenes. And as the characters were coming alive, as I was drawing them, they start to take on a life of their own, in a way. And I was telling Dennis this. I said, it's like the character knew what it wanted to say and told me, this is what I'm supposed to say at this point, not what you had written originally, but this is the real dialogue. And I kind of even though I wrote it, it kind of took me outside myself, and I said, "Oh, okay, this is yes, I wrote it, but it was the character speaking, which is I know it sounds crazy, but yeah, sometimes the character will talk to you, uh, and say, "No, this is what I should be saying." Um, and that's the wonderful thing about writing, the wonderful thing about really, you know, especially if it's a character or characters that you yourself get to care about, that you're just not like, oh, okay, well, I created this character and he's going to do this and that, or she's going to do this and that, and that's going to be the story. Because the best novels, the best books, the best movies are about characters that you wind up caring about,
Yeah.
you know, and you wind up caring about them because you start seeing them as real people. They're
Yeah.
not just some fictional creation, even though intellectually, oh, somebody just made these people up.
Yeah.
But when you're reading a book, I mean, when you see a movie, obviously that's easier because you have an actor playing that part,
Yeah.
and of course, the better the actor, the more you believe that that's a real character, that's a real person. Uh, but when you're writing a book, obviously, you have to let the reader's imagination create this character. And so the richer you make the character, uh, you know, whether it's somebody who's really smart or somebody who's maybe not as smart or whatever, I mean, you look at Forrest Gump, for example. In the novel, he's much less likable actually than Tom Hanks made him in the movie.
Yeah.
Uh, but he's still a very interesting character. You still want to know more about him. You follow his journey. Um, and again, he becomes this real person after a while. And I think that's why things. Why is Harry Potter such a pop? Why was it such a popular series?
Exactly.
Where there was like umpteen books. Because people who were reading the books loved those characters. They fell in
Exactly.
love with Harry and Hermione and Ron and all those other characters. Because whatever you might think of J.K. Rowling, she made you fall in love with his characters.
Yeah,
Same
exactly.
way with Anne Rice, same way with Stephen King, same way with all going back to whoever, Moby Dick, Herman Melville. You became invested in, oh, who is this crazy captain, Captain Ahab, and the crew of the ship, and why is he leading them to destruction with the whale and all this stuff. So anyway, so that's my advice to all writers is make sure that your characters are somebody that your reader can believe in
Yeah.
and make them real.
Yeah, exactly.
Not
Like I've had authors that I have absolutely fallen in love with their characters. I've submersed myself into the book, and I
hmm
have literally thrown a book and started crying, and I'm like, "No!" like like I have done that before. I'm like, "It's just a book," but no. No, you can't do that to that character. Please don't. Like
right,
that's
right,
an author's job is to get the readers submersed into that world and make
right.
you feel
You
like a
get
part
them
of it, and
exactly.
that's
You get
incredible.
them invested in the characters, right? Uh, I was thinking of speaking of that, I was thinking of Game of Thrones, where you become invested in a character and next episode they get their head chopped off or something. It's
Yeah.
like don't fall in love with any of these characters because they're probably going to die.
Exactly. George R. R. Martin's gonna kill him off, and
They're going to kill them off. Once you start liking them, it's like, nope, they're dead.
It's like Jamie, like, I didn't like that character in the beginning, and, like, there was this thing going around on Facebook, like, one of the Facebook memes, it said, "What if we told you that you'll end up liking this character toward the end?" And I did, I ended up liking the character toward the end, and I'm like, "Oh, I know George R.R. Martin's probably going to kill that character off. I shouldn't be too invested. But
Exactly. Exactly.
yeah, Game of Thrones is something else, that's for sure. And
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I respect it. I tend to gravitate toward, shows and books that are written in that style. One of my
Mhm.
favorite authors is Sarah J. Maas, and she writes the Throne of Glass series, and then she also writes the court. I think it's called A Court of Thorns and Roses. Like I've read that whole series, and like she's kind of got the Game of Thrones type style going there. I tend to gravitate towards books and authors like that because I get submersed into that world and I fall in love with the characters, and they're doing their job very well.
Mhm. Yeah.
um
Yeah.
so is there any other projects that you are working on or anything else that you would like to talk about before we wrap up this program?
Sure. Well, like I said, I mean, right now I'm concentrating on getting this fifth issue out of the comic book of the graphic novel. Um, and besides that, you you mentioned having books that you've never finished.
Oh yeah.
Uh, I was recently telling a friend of mine about this book that I had started years ago that I never finished, and they were like that sounds like a great story. Why don't you finish it? So I'm like, okay, all right. So I'm gonna work on that. It's another fantasy, a bit more of a kid's book than when I'd written. I also want to read. I have an idea. Finally, have an idea for sequel to the book I'd written earlier that I had published, the Shadow Maker. Um, so I'm going to start writing again,
That's good.
uh, and you know, and I'm going to see what I can do with the script that we talked about
Yeah.
that you read.
Yeah,
I really think it would make a really good movie.
I do
Uh,
too.
so I'm going to try to see what I can do with that. Try to get it actually in the hands of a producers who would be willing to put some money up and make this movie. Um, so that's kind of what I'm working on right now.
Yeah, that script's very, like I said, very well written. I think that it would make a really brilliant movie. I think it would be really good.
Thank
And
you.
like, you mentioned improv earlier. Like Pan has an improv show.
Hmm.
It's quite enjoyable. For those of you in the audience, whenever you're seeing this episode, because it's pre-recorded, we all know that. I spilt the beans a long time ago. It's pre-recorded, y'all. But improv is a good way to come up with storylines as well. Like,
Yeah.
it gets you motivated to come up with characters, and like we do that a lot at Cosmos Creative Television. We come up with characters. We
Hmm.
come up with different personalities, and it makes for a great time, but it also can help you in your writing process. It can help you come up with a story, and I think improv is incredible for that reason. Like,
Yeah. 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 And I'm glad you mentioned Pan's show. I'm also a regular cast on that, uh, along with Rory, and sometimes Renee will join us, um, and some other people. So yeah, yeah, I enjoy doing that. I love comedy. I
yes,
love comedy, and I love performing. So getting the opportunity to actually do that now, and uh, at this time of my life is so exciting. And I guess that's what if this is a concluding remark, I just want to say to people, don't ever think that, oh, I'm too old to do XYZ. I'm 66 years old, and here I am hosting my own show, writing comics, drawing comics, writing books, hosting other shows, being guests on shows, being interviewed by people like Miss Jamie here, who's has her own wonderful shows as well.
Thank you.
You know, so yeah, never think you're too old to do anything. You know, you're only limited by yourself. And so if there's something you want to do, go for it. Go for it. I mean, you have to know your limits, obviously.
Yeah.
Uh, you have to decide for yourself how far you can push it, but don't let that stop you from doing things. You know, if you want to climb mountains, by God, climb mountains. You know, you want to ride the rapids, ride the rapids. Or if it's just, you know, something as simple as, you know, having a nice meal at a fancy restaurant, then by God, eat the food, drink the wine, do the things. You know, don't let anybody say, "Oh, you're too old to do X, Y, Z," and just say, you know, "F you."
Pretty
I'm
much.
doing it. I'm doing it. By
Pretty
God.
much. You only live once. I mean,
You exactly.
life's too short.
YOLO, man. YOLO.
Exactly, exactly. For
Better things.
anybody
That's the thing.
for anybody who's interested in getting their hands on one of your graphic novels, how would they go about doing that?
Oh, okay. Uh, I have a website. It's called janellybean.com. That's
Okay.
JANELLYBEAN.com. And our children's books are there, and my comic book is there. There's a tab on the menu bar that'll take you if all you're interested in is the comic. It's you just click on that tab. If you have kids or know of people who have kids who might be interested in some of our kids' books, please, I
Yeah.
beg you.
Most definitely.
Uh, so
I will
so there
put
you go.
that link below. If you send it in the chat, I will definitely put the link below so people
Okay.
can find it. I will also put a link to the shows that Manny has been on. Um, General Howitzer's Big Monster Briefing Room, as well as his other shows that he's been on. And yeah, thank you so much for being a guest. I really appreciate it. And to the audience, until next time, love, hugs, and blessings.